Ever wonder what's really going on in your brain when you feel super ambitious, laser-focused, or just deeply satisfied with life? Well, today we're diving deep into the one chemical that's pulling all the strings, dopamine. You know those days where you feel like you can take on the world, you're on fire, and then the next day, poof, nothing. It's like the spark is just gone. We have all been there. And it turns out that feeling isn't just you being lazy. It's about the very real, very physical ebb and flow of dopamine inside your brain. Okay, so first things first, let's clear up a huge myth. Dopamine is not the pleasure molecule. We hear that all the time, but it's not quite right. Think of it as the molecule of motivation. It's the chemical that gets you off the couch to go after things. It's that feeling of wanting, of craving, of being on the right path. The pleasure comes later, maybe. Dopamine is the juice that gets you to the finish line.
So a great way to think about it is this. Dopamine is kind of like the universal currency of your brain. It's the currency for seeking things. Back in the day, it drove us to find food and water. Now, it's what drives you to seek out that promotion, to learn that new language, or even just to scroll for one more video. It is the fuel for all of our goals.
So how does this fuel actually work? Well, when dopamine gets released, it acts like this master switchboard operator in your brain. It's not just a simple on-off signal. Instead, it floods a whole area and makes certain thoughts, actions, and behaviors way more likely to happen. It's your brain's internal way of saying, hey, pay attention, this right here is important for survival, or at least it feels like it is. And this stuff is involved in so much more than just drive. I mean, look at this. It literally changes how you perceive time. That's why time flies when you're having fun. You're in a state of high dopamine. It's critical for movement. And of course, it has a massive, massive impact on your overall mood and how you feel moment to moment.
All right, so if dopamine is so great, the obvious question is, how do we get more of it? Well, here's the thing. It's not that simple. Your brain's dopamine system works like its own little economy. You have a baseline level of motivation, you have these exciting peaks, but for every single peak, you gotta pay a price.
And get this, different things cause wildly different spikes. So eating some chocolate, nice little bump, about 1.5 times your normal level. Sex, doubles it. But then look at a substance like nicotine. That can cause a huge spike, 2.5 times above your baseline. These are big, noticeable highs, but they are very temporary. Okay, and this is the part you really need to remember. This is the whole key. After one of those peaks, your dopamine level doesn't just gently float back down to normal. No, it crashes. It drops below where you started. That is the price. For every high, there's an equal and opposite low that follows. That's the dopamine crash.
Yeah, this quote just hits the nail on the head. Your motivation right now isn't some fixed number. It's all about how much dopamine you have compared to what you just had a few minutes ago. So if you just had a huge dopamine peak from winning a game or eating a huge meal, your baseline drops, and suddenly normal life feels kind of dull and boring. That is why your motivation can seem to just vanish.
So what's actually going on in there? Well, your brain has this little stash of dopamine that's ready to go, the readily releasable pool. When you get a big reward, you use up a big chunk of that stash all at once. Afterwards, it just takes your brain a little while to restock the shelves. And during that restocking period, you're in that dip, feeling less motivated and kind of meh. Okay, so it sounds a bit bleak, right? Are we just stuck on this up and down dopamine roller coaster forever? Well, no, not at all. There is an incredibly powerful way to hack this system. And it's not by chasing bigger peaks. It's by changing what causes the dopamine release in the first place. Let's get into it. Let me tell you about this fascinating experiment they did with kids in a nursery school. So they found a group of kids who just love to draw. They do it for hours, totally on their own. Then the researchers started giving them a reward, a little gold star, every time they drew. And at first, the kids were thrilled. But then the researchers stopped giving out the stars. And guess what happened? The kids stopped wanting to draw. The external reward had completely killed their natural internal love for it. And right there, that's the whole game. It's the difference between extrinsic rewards, the prize, the paycheck, the gold star, and intrinsic rewards. When you're focused on the prize, your dopamine is all about the finish line, and the work to get there feels like a grind. But if you can learn to get dopamine from the process, from the effort, from the struggle itself, well then, the work becomes its own reward, and that builds a drive that is so much more powerful and sustainable.
All right, so how do you actually do this? Like in the real world when things get tough. The next time you're feeling that friction, that this is so hard feeling, that's your moment. First, just notice it. Acknowledge it. Then you have to consciously tell yourself, this part right here, the effort, this is the good part. I chose this. When you do that, you're literally using your thoughts to attach dopamine to the struggle. And if you do it enough, you rewire your brain to love the process, not just the prize.
So that mental flip, that's your superpower. But what else can we do day to day? There are some really simple, practical things you can do to keep your dopamine baseline healthy and stable. Things that prevent those super deep lows and keep you feeling motivated for the long haul.
So here are a few things that are just fantastic for building a solid dopamine foundation. Regular exercise, and I mean exercise you actually like, is huge. Same with real, quality, social connection, not just scrolling through feeds. Even your morning coffee, in moderation, helps make your dopamine receptors more sensitive. But one of the most powerful and honestly surprising tools is cold exposure.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. A cold shower? No thanks. But listen to this. Getting into cold water is a shock for sure, but it does something amazing in your brain. It causes a 2.5 times increase in dopamine. But here's the magic part. Unlike nicotine, it's a slow, sustained release. It can literally lift up your entire baseline of dopamine, focus, and mood for hours after you get out. It's incredible.
So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Managing your motivation isn't about chasing bigger and bigger highs. It's about protecting your baseline. You have to stop laying peaks. Listening to music while scrolling Instagram, while eating junk food. You're just setting yourself up for a massive crash. The real secret to sustainable motivation is to stop chasing the next high.
Because really, at the end of the day, you are in the driver's seat. You get to control this system, not the other way around. It all comes down to the stories you tell yourself and the small choices you make. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. What effort, what struggle are you going to choose to make the rewarding part today?